All right, welcome back inside our proactive newsroom. And joining me now is Stephen Rentschler. He is the CEO of Nevada Lithium. And Stephen, welcome back. It's great to see you again.
Hi, Steve. How you doing?
I'm doing very well, thanks. And lots to talk about today with obviously what you're doing at Bonnie Claire, but also around the world as well as far as electric vehicles are concerned. So let's start with Bonnie Claire because that's important. You were begun drilling now, which is very exciting.
Yeah, Steve, it is very exciting. So yesterday we put a press release out announcing that we'd commenced the work program at Bonnie Claire. This is going to encompass at least two deep drill holes at Bonnie Claire. Again, we're situated about 2.5 hours northwest of Las Vegas in Nevada. The purpose of this drilling is to essentially advance us in the work that we're doing towards updating our PEA. Earlier in the year, we identified a very, very large, very high grade swath of mineralization at the bottom of our holes that had both lithium and boron. And we basically have taken a relook at everything that we've done up to this point in time and decided on the best way to sort of incorporate all this, I would say, very good news into our forward progress. And these holes are essentially the first in the field of the work that we're going to be using to essentially reflect what we think is very, very high value in those lithium and boron assays that we got earlier.
Yeah. Now you're obviously working towards a report here, and it'll be much different than the one that we saw in the past, correct?
Yeah, I think it really has the opportunity to be much different and in many ways much higher quality. And I would say the centerpiece of that is going to be the resource itself. We are in a very, very dynamic environment. Obviously, the entire lithium industry is, but certainly with our own project. And if I just step back for a second for investors and a lot of new people that I've been talking to as well, really our story of Bonnie Claire is predicated on a preliminary economic assessment, that was done almost 3 years ago now.
Mm.
And the drilling that went into that, essentially was finished, call it mid-2021. Subsequent to that, we have continued to drill, and it would have been in an effort to increase a resource, which already is globally one of the largest out there. But what we continue to find as we drilled is that the mineralizations continue to get thicker and to increase in terms of the assays at depth. And from 20 to 2022, our drilling was pretty much somewhere around 2,000 feet maximum. In 2023, we continued to go deeper. And what we found is that mineralization that now we know has boron as well as lithium, very, very high grades, seems to be extending itself as it goes down in depth. So it seems like the blanket of very high grade mineralization that we have that's laying at the bottom of everything that we drilled before is continuing to get thicker. What this means is, as we go forward, we want to make sure that we are continuing to drill all the way through that mineralization, which means as previously we thought a 2,000-foot hole would do it. Then we went to a 2,500-foot hole. Well, the last hole that we just drilled, which is the first one of this year, went down to 2,800 feet, and we stopped when we thought we were through essentially the mudstones, which typically contain our lithium, basically 200 feet more than we did before. We don't have assays back, but it looks very, very good. And that was a step out hole. And for those people who aren't familiar with sort of the vernacular, that means that we just went basically out in one direction, 450 meters past any of our other holes, or about, let's call it 1,500 feet for US investors, to find this increasing, again, intercept of what we hope is going to be very, very good mineralization. Now, the second hole that we're currently working on now is what's called an infill hole. And what we've done is we've come back, and basically the position of the new hole is flanked by holes that we had done previously. And the reason that you do this is to increase the statistical confidence that you have in those assays that you've gotten previously. And all of this will get wrapped up into essentially an updated PEA that is going to be looking at all this new high mineralization, high lithium, high boron mineralization that we simply didn't know existed a number of years ago. So it's very, very exciting for us.
Yeah, and in the news release you talk about the fall of 2024. So sometime this fall you'll be able to have that report out, you hope?
That is what we hope. Is
Yeah.
again, this is very, very dynamic. But the reason I say I hope is because we're trying to time everything up. There are many facets to these technical reports. You have the drilling, and we know from the drilling, from drill times, et cetera, and we did very well with the first hole. But now we're coming into, believe it or not, monsoon season in Nevada. And if there's lightning around, the drill team has to stop, things like that. So we may get slowed down a little bit. And then by the time you get all of the assays put together and received for these very deep holes, again, remember, we're talking about assaying from surface down to 2,800 feet. A lot of other folks in Nevada, are going down 300 feet or whatever. We're going down magnitudes further than what they are. So it'll take every bit of 6 to 8 weeks to start getting our assays to come back in. Long way of saying by the time we have a chance to interpret all of that, to have the technical report rewritten to basically include all the updated assays, resource estimation, additional metallurgy that's going on, because this mineralization is different. This high-grade mineralization is definitely different. It looks very, very similar to Rhyolite Ridge's, Rhyolite Ridge, which is Ioneer's, project, which is only about 100 miles to the northwest of us. All of that needs to be reflected in an updated PEA. So we're working very hard to make all these pieces be put together seamlessly so that there are no delays. But we keep finding good stuff, and it makes us have to continue. Otherwise, we're going to sterilize part of this project.
Yeah. Stephen, why have you on the line? I just wanted to ask you about some recent comments obviously there's an election happening in the United States and people are not sure about what's going on in the world. Vice President Kamala Harris has talked about the importance of electrification and moving forward with electric vehicles and the environment. The Republicans have been a little lukewarm on that particular topic. So does that really have a big effect on what you're doing? And just as someone who's in the space, I was interested in hearing what you had to think about that.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I tell you, Steve, I get asked about this a lot because I am a minority in terms of being sort of a U.S. CEO of a natural resource company. This is, of course, all my opinion. The talk that we're hearing now from Donald Trump versus, well, we're going to stop EVs, day one, et cetera. Things just they are not as simple as that in U.S. politics. The arm twisting, the horse trading that was necessary to get the Inflation Reduction Act put in place on a bipartisan level was just, it was like Herculean. It was incredibly hard to do. Things are often done quickly by executive order in the US as a way to circumvent all of Congress. But of course, invariably what happens is they get caught up in the legal, entanglement. And that takes time to sort itself out. What I would say to people, and this is the way I think about it, EVs are definitely something that are here to stay. It is the rate of penetration into all these markets that I think is going to be called into question. There are differences around the world, what's going on in China, where I think they're continuing to penetrate by, say, 30% a year. Europe just slowed down on the latest numbers I saw. I think the US was up 10% first half of 2024 year over year. And we're going to have ebbs and flows. Obviously, when the US car manufacturers find ways to follow Tesla's lead or BYD's lead in China, you're going to get an influx of cars that are more affordable. I mean, obviously, the economy down here in the US, we're facing headwinds of rising interest rates, a US election that's come up. Let's not forget our president almost took a bullet in the head. All these sorts of things contribute to uncertainty. However, all of that being said, first half year over year, battery storage, basically totally battery demand, when you look at it, was almost 25% year over year increased. That all is going to permeate into the lithium space. So we might have lithium in terms of EVs slacking off from quarter to quarter. However, we have a tremendous growth rate that's starting to be expressed in battery storage that's stationary, right? These big grids that are coming online. So yes, I understand lithium spot prices are still depressed. You want to see additional volatility, look and see what's happened to copper over the course of the past 2 months, or actually 1 month. Volatility in these spaces is something that we have to absolutely count on. I do not believe that the future is anywhere near as dire as it may look at this second. It's not all about EVs now, particularly with that stationary storage coming on. But I think we're going to start to see a lot more clarity as we get through the US elections and head into the new year, all in my opinion, of course.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense for sure. Stephen, thank you so much. Good update. Good to see you as well. And we look forward to continuing to follow what is a developing story over the next few months.
Thanks so much, Stevie. Take care of yourself.
You as well. Stephen Rentschler, the CEO of Nevada Lithium.